valuable professionally. And one example of this, how did I arrive here? Well, it all started with a tweet. So what happened was in December, on my blog, I received a trackback. So I followed the link, and there was this blog post. And I looked at that, and I said, what language is that? I said, it looks a bit French, but no, French doesn't have those type of... no, it's not Spanish, Italian maybe. And I didn't know what language it was. So I sent a tweet. Can somebody tell me what language this is in? And also, is there a tool so that you can automatically find out? And somebody says, yeah, use Google Translate. And somebody says, oh, my partner's from Barcelona and it's Catalan. And then I got a tweet from BrianKelly-SeminariGironaPart3de6.mp4, who says, I can confirm it's in Catalan and it's my post. And I thought, oh, that's good. So somebody was interested. And so over the next few months, Michael commented on several of my posts, and I thought, this is interesting, we have similar interests here. And so eventually, Professor Duran said, would you like to come and give a seminar going to a University 2.0 conference in Santander next week? So I'm here thanks to a tweet and thanks to a blog, a track back. So there's some ways in which something like Twitter can really enhance one's professional activities. And this is the growth of one's professional social networks. Yep. Okay, so to move on. So I'll now start to, half an hour left, give some definitions of an amplified conference, an amplified event, look at a couple of case studies, some examples of the technologies and the human aspects, and some of the best practices. So the term amplified conferences was coined in July 2007, I believe, by a former director of mine, Lorcan Dempsey. Those of you who are in the library might know him. He worked for OCLC, and he was formative. He's been involved in Dublin core development type work. And he wrote this very brief blog post in which he was observing patterns. He was saying, it's interesting to watch how more conferences are amplifying their effect through a variety of network tools and collateral communications. So he just gave some examples of some of the technologies that were being used. And that amplified conference, that really stuck. People now use it all over the world. And my contribution was, I thought, this is important. And if there's something of importance, it should be in Wikipedia. So I created this page in Wikipedia. It's probably one of my most well-read publications, because people read Wikipedia, don't they? How many people read Wikipedia? So, oh, yeah. Okay, this is fine. Do the librarians let you use Wikipedia? Yeah. Okay. Oh, we're okay. We do. That's fine. So in this Wikipedia entry, I tried to define a bit more what we meant by amplification. So it's amplification of the audience's voice. So you shouldn't be here just to listen to me. You should be engaging. You should be talking. So it can be amplification of those conversations that you're not having at the moment. Amplification of the speaker's voice. How is it in Canada? What's the weather like in Canada at the moment? It was raining when I was last in Bath. Can somebody say what the weather is like? It would also be interesting, Michael, if you could give some stats of the numbers, if you've got those stats. Amplification across time. So we can time shift. So we can record it and view it afterwards. And amplification of the speaker's slides. Now, I said that this was really a description of things that were happening. And it's been happening a while. So in 2003, I was at a conference in Budapest. And this was an article that was written by Paul Chabagé at the University of Bristol in the Times Higher Education supplements. And a speaker said, Tim Berners-Lee referred to embedded menus as hot links. Tim Berners-Lee was in the audience. And on the back channel, it was IRC at the time, he says, I never said that. And he went to the email archives. He went back to when he originally coined it and says, no, I just call them links. Here is the evidence. And this was described as real-time peer review at conferences. And we've started to explore how the quality of research conferences can be enhanced when there is that dynamic and real-time evaluation and commenting. But back then, there was a recognition of the concerns. Those people typing away, isn't it a bit noisy? There were only about 10% of the audience had laptops, so there might be about 10% here. Those of you who don't have a laptop, do you feel excluded? Do you feel deprived? They're talking to other people, they're learning, but I'm not. Is this fair? Is this democratic? So there are those type of issues. And then this happened. I can remember the first time this happened to me. I was giving a talk and I said something, and somebody in the front row started typing away. What have I said? I'm a bit scared. And then afterwards I said, Brian's given a really interesting talk, and I thought, no, I shouldn't be so worried about it. So there are some type of concerns. But Paul, back in 2003, concluded the technologies are likely to be beneficial. Collective learning and analysis, comprehensive notes that can be taken, new insights and links. And Paul concluded the richest potential lies in the interaction between different members of the audience, particularly if you believe that learning and the generation of knowledge are active, engaging and social processes. So if you believe in this, you'll start to appreciate the benefits of that connectiveness that we can have using such technologies. So I'll start to move on a bit more quickly. This was a paper that Paul, myself and a colleague, Emma Tompkin, wrote in 2005, in which we were saying we provided some examples of this, why it was potential benefits, and explored a deployment framework, because not everybody will not necessarily want this, and sometimes the technology isn't up to the job. The Wi-Fi network might be slow, or there might be firewalls in place which causes problems. But we realised at UConn that there was a need to explore something further and to gain some evidence and some feedback. So this was the IWMW, the UConn's Institutional Web Management Workshop. So we were using wikis and instant messaging and IRC, and we provided help on how to use these technologies, and an acceptable use policy was provided, and we sought to evaluate it. But then the interesting thing was, the second day of the conference, this was a record. We kept a record, I think this can be important, of what was being discussed on the IRC channel at 10:08 on the 7th of the 7th. Tim said, explosion on the London Underground, entire network closed. And Jeremy Speller, who's based in London, University College of London, said grief, good grief. He was concerned, it's near where he works. And we were speculating about it. This was the day of the London bombings. At the time, we just thought there was an accident. This happened. We started to realise the importance of event amplifications for if there are disasters or inconveniences and the like. So this, people start to think, oh yes, perhaps there is a need to make sure that I can be connected when I'm away from home. So we carried out the evaluation, and very positive. It was just 35 of about 150 people responded, but the people were strong. I would encourage use of network applications at future events. Strongly agree blue, agree red, neutral. So there was only a very small proportion that said we shouldn't be doing that. And over time, that was 2005, and now it's just become so very mainstream. In particular, not everywhere, web developers use this. Web managers will tend to use it. Increasingly, those who are involved in Library 2.0 will start to use it. But in other disciplines, they don't. So we're still continuing the evangelism, advocacy of the benefits that can be provided. But just to give an example of how we've moved on, 3 conferences last year and 1 this year, ALT-C, the Association of Learning Technology Conference. It's a big e-learning conference. This year's one takes place, I think it's next week. 4,708 tweets with the event tag from 747 users. Large numbers of people who are using it. Part of it might be discussing the content. Some of it might be social. It was a 3-day event. People might be saying, does anybody fancy going to the bar afterwards and shall we meet up? Those type of discussions. Those were useful. That enabled people to make new contacts. I have an interest in use of blogging to support student learning. Anybody else, and shall we go for a meal and discuss those things? Those new contacts become possible in this type of web managers events. And the JISC event, this was really interesting. This is just a 1-day event. Over 2,000 tweets from 432 users in this 1 day. There are about 500 people in the audience. Lots of people watching the video stream. And some really good talks about the future directions of higher education and technology. And people were really discussing and joining in. It was really active participation. So that was great. So we started this year at UConn's event on the 12th to the 14th of July. We made a policy statement. We said we will treat the remote audience as first-class citizens. They weren't paying, but we said, no, they are entitled. It might have been they wanted to come to our event, but didn't have the funding to come. So why were we treating the remote audience who weren't paying as first-class citizens? To maximise the learning throughout society, throughout the sector, so they could all benefit. There was actually little additional cost in making this available to them. We started to explore some of the greening issues for the events, and to explore ways in which maybe next year when cuts arrived, we might need to work in different ways. So we had video streaming, we had the hashtags for the different sessions, so people could talk about the individual sessions, the Twitter wall, slide blogs and slideshare. So this was the view that you might see from a remote audience. The remote audience would come in and they might click to see the live video stream or the Twitter wall or download the recorded videos afterwards. So this was the live Twitter wall, the live video stream. So when it was live, there'd be a video there, and it was, you could see the recent tweets and people could easily participate. So this was very much designed to make it easy and to encourage people to respond. The more people who are starting to respond, the better we can see, and the bigger impression that we get of how people reacted to those talks. And then afterwards, the talks were available to be downloaded. And we were using technology, we were archiving the tweets. A service called Twapper Keeper. So we had this record of those informal discussions. Those informal discussions can be important. We might think, oh no, it's just a finished product that we want. So when I was in the Salvador Dali Museum